My name is Amy. I am a representative of the association called Hong Kong in Deutschland. We are the first registered association for Hong Kongers in Germany. Today we have very limited time, and I just wanted to make a few highlights to let you know what's been happening in Hong Kong and why I'm here today, that there's a need for me to come here and speak as well. As you notice that I'm trying to stay away as much as possible from the hot seat. Yes. So you might notice that in the media, you don't hear so much about Hong Kong anymore. It's not just because there's a Ukraine war, and it's not just because there are storms and climate change issues, energy crisis. It's a lot to do with the fact that in Hong Kong, freedom of journalism, freedom of press has been very much suppressed. You can almost say it's almost gone. As a Hong Konger living overseas, I cannot reliably find online or on printed paper, newspaper, objective, neutral news from Hong Kong anymore. That's how bad it is. So my job today is, with this gap, I hope to fill in a bit of this gap and let you know what's been happening. Let me start by saying basic freedoms and human rights situation in Hong Kong continue to deteriorate. It was already bad in 2019 when everybody could see on the television about police brutality, for example. It actually got worse, even though we don't hear so much about it. And you will notice that just now I mentioned freedom, human rights. Usually you also use the word democracy in the same sentence, but I didn't, because democracy has basically gone altogether in Hong Kong, and I will talk about it briefly in a moment too. I will start by very briefly introducing the national security law in Hong Kong. Some of you might be familiar about it, but just in case not, it was imposed upon, not just introduced, but imposed upon Hong Kong in June 2020 without due process. The people in Hong Kong was not consulted. There was no discussion of any kind. Suddenly one day, China says, hey, this is your law and you're going to abide by it. And from there on, the law itself is also, I would use the word ridiculous because there's no any other appropriate word. Under this law, anybody, Chinese citizen, Hong Kong citizen, or otherwise, can commit crime against this law in Hong Kong, in China, or anywhere in the world at any time, right now, or in the past, and of course in the future, can be prosecuted. So this is like the law, the omnipotent law. It's like anybody, any crime that you feel like, even though explicitly in the law says it's mostly about treason, sedition, and incitement. Let me start by mentioning some recent arrests. We all know that lots of dissidents have been arrested, but the story goes deeper than that, or let's say sadder than that. Thank you very much to Benedict Rogers. He mentioned that Cardinal Zen was arrested. In fact, he is a Catholic cardinal, Joseph Zen, aged 90. This is a senior citizen, 90 years old, arrested this year in May. And why was he arrested? Because he was the one of the trustees in a fund called 612 Humanitarian Relief Fund. This fund provided medical and legal assistance to the people who are affected, who are dissidents, who suffered from police brutality and so on. So this is a very purely humanitarian fund, and the cardinal was arrested for that. And really ridiculous, I have to use this word again. What was the crime? The crime was that he was colluding with foreign forces. And he was arrested with 5 other trustees. In fact, he went to court just 4 days ago, and the course is ongoing. We have to follow and see what happens. And just to mention a few other arrests made under this national security law, just to let you know the extent of the law and how ridiculous it really is. There were 3 gentlemen in Canada, 3 Hong Kongers. They wanted to start a Hong Kong shadow parliament. They have been declared fugitives, and they are now on a wanted list in July, 2 months ago. Last month in August, there is a Facebook group called Civil Servant Secrets. This is really an online group with gossips. You know, you're talking about which toilet in the government building doesn't work, that kind of gossip group on Facebook. The 3 administrators for this group was arrested. They were arrested because there's potential that they're going to say something bad about the government because they're civil servants. Now, what's really sad about all these people who got arrested is that you would expect them to, go through a fair trial or a fair legal process. But these days, when you're arrested, you sit in jail waiting for your trial. Very often, these people wait 1 year or more. There are many cases where people are waiting for 2 years and still waiting for a trial with no announcement of when this trial will come. So being arrested right now in Hong Kong is very bad idea. You basically expect to sit in jail forever. So now I turn a little bit away from this topic of arrests. I'd like to talk to you about surveillance. We see how China has massive surveillance in Tibet and in East Turkestan. And we see the trend coming to Hong Kong very quickly. And let me again give you some examples. Right now in Hong Kong, you need to have an app on your phone. It's called the Health Code app. And you need to have a green code on your app to enter a number of places, such as government buildings, food markets, hospitals, post offices, restaurants, shopping malls, cinemas, parks. Basically, everywhere you want to go, you need to have such an app. And when you beep it, you know what you're giving the government. Your personal information and your position. This is how the Hong Kong government is tracking its population. And we also have national ID cards, very much like the German ID card here, except in this card, there's also a chip that is capable of corresponding with remote devices. And we know that in the lamp posts in Hong Kong, they have such communication devices, and which is why everybody or every reasonable person in Hong Kong would put their ID card in a little bit of a case that prevents such information from flowing. So this is a complete in English would be a complete coverage of the population anywhere in the city. They want to know where, when you are doing what. So this is surveillance coming very quickly and very already there. I want to talk now briefly about democracy or lack thereof. If I laugh, it's not because I take the situation lightly, because the situation is so absurd to the point of being hilarious. The only appropriate response is to laugh. So let me tell you what's so funny. So we, of course, have a chief executive in Hong Kong. In May this year, 2022, there was an quote-unquote election. Of course, it was not an election done by the general population, but rather a committee of 1,500 people elected this person. There were 8 candidates who wanted to be on the ballot, but were not allowed to, which is why on the ballot, there was only 1 candidate. And, of course, this candidate was elected with many, many votes. And so in Hong Kong, we say, oh, this is North Korea style. It's not South Korea style election. And if you notice, all the reports in Western media, very conspicuously, the word election does not appear. People will report it with being chosen. There was a selection process, but not the word elected, because it was not an election. And last year in December, the Chinese Communist Party published a white paper. The title is called Hong Kong, Democratic Progress under the Framework of One Country, Two Systems. This book, or this piece of work, I call it literature. It should win awards in the fictional department, focusing on political propaganda. It's just things inside are just so hilarious. A 2-sentence summary is that in this book says the Chinese style of democracy is better than the Western style of democracy. And Hong Kong, having the Chinese style democracy implemented, is therefore having a full and successful implementation of the two system, one country policy. And because of that, Hong Kong has complete democracy and everybody is happy. It literally says all the citizens are happy. You can really laugh at such a piece of writing. I mean, how can you flip black and white in such a total? If you're interested, tell me. I give you a link. You can have a read. It's hilarious. You can only read it as fiction and laugh about it. And I know my time is up. I want to only say very quick words that I tell my young daughter. Crying generally does not solve problems. I can sit here forever and tell you about all the bad things and cry about it, but that does not solve problems. And so I have a few, let's say, action items or suggestions to the audience here and also around the world. My appeal to all of you, each of you, please keep your awareness up. I know we don't hear about that. We don't hear about Hong Kong in the news so much anymore, but please keep your awareness up because things do happen and things do get worse. And just very quickly, very good news. In Chinese, we say, in Cantonese, we say, 自己香港自己救. That means it's our Hong Kong. We will fight for our own deliverance. And in that sense, I'm very glad to announce here that in Germany, we have last month just launched a second registered organization called Freiheit für Hong Kong, Freedom for Hong Kong. And David Missel here is a colleague with me on this new organization. Ray Wong, the prominent dissident who got a political asylum here in Germany, is the chairperson, and our focus will be political advocacy. So expect us to make a lot of noise, and I thank you for your attention. Thank you for listening.
I want to ask a really brief question of each panelist after you've spoken, and I do ask you to keep your comments short. What can foreign governments and organizations do to support Hong Kong now?
I have many ideas, but I say only one now, but very concrete. Sanctions. Sanctions, sanctions, sanctions. If you look at the news just yesterday, our Foreign Minister Baerbock, she was asking not just Germany, but the European Union to call sanctions against Iran for the recent protests. And I'm asking myself, what are the differences between those protests and protests in Hong Kong? If you have the balls to have sanctions against Iran, do that for Hong Kong too.